Okay, so just to put this first session into context, when we were here last time, you will all be aware of the things that are happening out in Israel at the moment. It's across the news, and you'll also be aware that people are falling into one camp or another. There seems to be an outpouring of hate, particularly in many countries against the Jews. I know you've seen some of the marches, even in this country, where it's numbering in not tens of thousands, but hundreds of thousands of people taking to the streets against the Jewish people. In America, you've also got hundreds of thousands taken to the streets in favour of the Jewish people. So people are coming into one camp or another, even in the church. And there can be quite an outpouring of hate, and that's been quite a concern to me. I think I shared with you last time that the day this happened, which was the 7th of last month, the 7th of October, had a meeting planned that evening back home, a monthly meeting, and for months usually we have a visiting speaker come in and talk about a topic, but for months we decided that on that day we weren't going to have a visiting speaker. We felt it was a day when it was going to be significant. We thought that was maybe something to do with the United Nations or something. We didn't know why it was going to be significant, and so we had this meeting with no visiting speaker. So we had, if you like, a clean page. And lots more people than normal turned up because of this day. And we said, we must be praying for Israel. And so that was the real focus. This was the day it happened.
The 6th or 7th?
The 7th of October. And one of the things that was said loud and clear, when the Lord speaks sometimes, there was one thing that resonated, that everybody in that meeting, if you ask them, what did the Lord say in that meeting? There's one thing that stood out, and that was that the Lord was saying, be careful how you pray.
Yes.
You need to pray according to my will, because you may find yourself praying against me. And that has opened all sorts of things, because on the surface you think, I know what to pray, I need to pray this, that and the other, but what is God doing in the midst of this? Because actually I believe that there's lots of things going on. And we may touch on some of those things at the end. If you look at the prophecies that are still to be fulfilled regarding things like Gaza, even mentioned in the Bible, Philistine, it's the same place, Edom, you think, is this the fulfillment of prophecy? Whether it is or whether it's part of it, but I believe that God's doing something, and doing something within the Jewish people and within Gazans as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But what we're going to do then is to have a look at this subject at two different levels. One is to look at the history of Israel at the level that you get on the television, the history, what's gone on in the land, who invaded, how do you end up with the geography you've got at the moment. But then to try and get and say, but actually what's underneath this? What's the spiritual aspect? What's at work? Is that making sense? And we found, it was a real timely thing when Jogesh suggested we do this, because we found that actually this is needed.
Yes.
Right round the churches, because it's one of those subjects that's rarely spoken about in some churches, and so just what is going on? Is that fair enough?
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go through it hopefully as quickly as possible, so we don't. Hang on. Go to. If we go this, so this is what it is. It's a brief history of Israel, and so we're all on. I know. We all know this. I think you know where Israel is. If this is a map of Europe and North Africa, it's right down there in that bottom right-hand corner. We're talking of a very small piece of land that here is what about 2,250 miles away from where we're sitting. It's tiny country. It's the 150th smallest country in the world. So on a table, 150 down the list. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It really is tiny. But this little tiny bit of land down here, and this is what it is there, is spoken about more in the Bible than any other. I mean, all the Bible takes place in and around this area. It was written, the whole of the Bible, with perhaps the exception of Luke's Gospel and Acts. Luke wrote the two. We think he's a Gentile, written by Jewish people. So this little tiny piece of land is actually quite important. And time after time after time in the Bible, God refers to it as my land. And he doesn't do that about, I mean, we know in one sense the whole the whole of the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. But this bit of land is quite special, and he calls it the glory of all lands in Ezekiel. So this tiny little bit of land, and it is tiny, it's only about 8,019 square miles. And if you want to compare that to something, you compare it to compare it to Wales. Now there's the UK on the right. Wales, Israel is almost exactly the same size as Wales.
Wow.
It's a long, thin country. It's to drive from top to bottom. You can drive from the top of Israel right down to the bottom in about 6 hours. The roads are good, you just keep on pootling down. But if you realise that this is the same size as Wales, and I ask you, which appears on the international news more, Wales or Israel, it's out of all proportion, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so this is this little bit of land. It's, when you look at it from I've shown you this picture before. If you look at it from space, this is the Mediterranean Sea. You've got a ridge of mountains down the middle. So all the weather all the rain comes in off the sea. As it climbs, as the clouds are forced up over the mountains, you get the rain. So you've got green on this side of the mountains. The Rift Valley. This is the lowest place on the face of the earth. All right, this is the Dead Sea. The reason it's dead is because all the water comes in. The only escape is by evaporation, so it just leaves all the salt and all the minerals behind. It's about 1,300 feet or so below sea level. So actually, the rain stopped falling. This is just absolute desert down here, and all of this down in the south is desert. In fact, something like 60% of this little bit of land is desert. It has below the rainfall that's needed, and yet it's got a variety of vegetation. So you've got desert on the one hand, just to show you some pictures. I think you've seen these. This is what desert looks like down in the south, by the Red Sea. And if you ever get to go there, it's quite a strange place, the wilderness. It's absolutely silent. There's no cars, there's no noise, there's no hum. It's just quiet. So if you want to be away by yourself, this is the place to go. There's not many residents there, but every now and again you will get a spring. And water is everything in Israel. Water is life. If you've got no water, you've got no life. So you have to have a water supply. More battles have been fought over water in the years than oil, because you need this. This particular one is at a place called Ein Gedi. This is down in the south. This is actually where David hid from Saul in the cave, down here. These are real places, and it's the wild. If you ever get to go there, because the wildlife have to come to drink. So if you stay there, you will see ibex, you will see conies, you'll see all sorts come to drink. It's a wildlife haven. As you go around Israel, that's not the best picture because it's only with a little camera, but there are places where it's absolutely bountiful. I mean, God called this the land flowing with milk and honey.
These fruits are not, they were
Yes,
grown in
Israel,
Wow.
but of course in season.
Yeah.
In the season, so in the summer season you get all the soft fruits because it's very seasonal. But of course you also get things like this. Those are thorns. Now remember that Jesus had a crown of thorns on his head. That's Jenny's hand that is there. Okay, so you can see the size of what's going on. And here's something else. This is cactus.
Yeah.
And this is the word for cactus is sabra. Now sabra is what Israelis call the Jewish people who were born in the land. Because they say you've got a very prickly outside, but very soft in the middle. Because they're full of liquid. But to get to the liquid, you've got to get past all these thorns. And that's what they call themselves. Up in the north, it can be lush in places. You have lots of springs. Mount Hermon's in the north, and that's where a lot of the waters come out of the ground. This actual picture here is at Dan Springs, and this is actually the largest spring in the Middle East. This particular one, it's one of them, because they all come together to form the River Jordan. And this one actually produces 240 million cubic meters a year of water. It's an awful lot of water, and it'll flow. And it's beautiful up there. It's green. It's lush.
What is the name of it?
This is Dan. This is right up in the north, by Tel Dan. Dan Springs, it's called, where the tribe of Dan.
250 million cubics.
240 million cubic meters. That water will then flow as the crow flies in a straight line about 150 miles to the Dead Sea, but it actually meanders like this all the way down. So the actual journey is nearer 300 miles. Up in the north is where the main agricultural area is. So I'm standing on top of a hill called Megiddo here, and this is looking over the Jezreel plain. That's all agricultural. But the interesting thing for us is that where I'm standing is a place in the Bible that's in the local language is Ha Megiddo, the mountain Megiddo, which translates as Armageddon. This is the place where all the final
Revelation.
where the armies come together.
10 kingdoms.
And actually this I don't know if I got more than one picture of it. I think I have. You just see what it's like, this flat big plain. Many of the battles in the Bible took place here. Deborah, just where Jonathan and Saul died. It's where Gideon fought, and this is it. The very first recorded battle ever in history that we know of was an Egyptian battle with one of the pharaohs here. And of course this is also Armageddon at the end. So it's a real place. And it's Napoleon fought there, he lost. Churchill said it was the cockpit of the Middle East. And so you've got that up in the north, and you go right down to the bottom bit, the point at the bottom on the Red Sea, and you've got, this is Eilat, and that's a tourist place. This is where they go for the holidays. You have to bear in mind that Israel is a secular country, so people go here for snorkeling, people will go here for the sea life. This is a tourist place. And in between on the coast is Tel Aviv, and Tel Aviv is just a modern city. You could be anywhere in the world. Bearing in mind, Israel is one of the most high-tech countries in the world. It's up with, you got Silicon Valley, you got India, you've all got your own specialisms, but in terms of innovation, this is only second to Silicon Valley. And yet,
open a branch.
Sorry? One branch.
We
Well,
need
we
to
need
open a branch.
for our
You want to
company.
open a branch there? Okay.
God willing.
But bearing in mind, this is one of the things we may get to later, because everything that Israel does isn't good.
Mm.
This wants to be the gay capital of the world.
Oh no.
Okay.
So they plan to do.
So there's another side to the coin,
Right.
and actually at the moment, as I said, when we talk about what's going on in Israel, what's God doing, nobody's talking about gay things out there at the moment. It's all about fighting and survival, and so maybe that's God doing things, because these things are that's like a poke in the eye to God, isn't it?
Yeah.
That festival, I don't know what you've seen and what you haven't seen. I've seen some really horrible footage come out of. You don't get it on the BBC or those. But that Peace Festival.
It's a secular festival.
It was a
isn't
secular
it?
festival, and as far as we understand, it was dedicated to Buddha.
Oh my goodness. It's
So,
like
is it-
losing God's anger.
Absolutely. That's why I say there's another. This is why you've got to be very careful, because God, and we may get to it. When God gave the land to Abraham, He said, not now, because the sin of the Amorites is not yet full. God will use a situation to His glory,
Yes.
even when you kind of think that it's working at all sorts of levels. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
So it is just bearing in mind it is a secular society. So that's just a sort of the type of country you're looking at today. But whose land is it? It depends. When people start arguing about it, where do they start the clock? They some would go back to David, some will go back to Abraham, some will go back to 1948 when the States had some 1967. They're all key events in the history of Israel, but I think we need to go back to what the Bible says. Now the Bible is because we want to be. You remember that, I think I told you this. One of the things that came to me that first day was people said, "Which camp are we in?" Remember Joshua when he got to Jericho?
Yeah.
And there's the man with the drawn sword.
Yeah.
And he says, "Are you for us or against us?" He said, "Which side are you on? Theirs or ours?" And he says, "No. I am the commander of the Lord's army." You see, Joshua, it's not which side am I on, it's which side are you on? Are we on the Lord's side? Is that making sense?
Yes.
So that's what it's that's what it's all about. Now, just to put things into perspective, so this is where we are today. We're going to look at the promises God made. But God actually made, do you remember Abraham had two children? He had Isaac and Ishmael and Isaac. He made a promise to Ishmael first. And it says he said to Abraham, he said, "I will increase your descendants that they will be too numerous to count." It also goes on to say that he will be a wild donkey of a man, his hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him, and he will live in hostility towards his brothers. That's Genesis chapter 16, verses 9 to 12. And later, when he makes a covenant promise to Abraham, God actually says, "And as for Ishmael, I have heard you, I will surely bless him, I will make him fruitful, and will greatly increase his numbers. He will be the father of 12 rulers, and I will make him into a great nation." That's Genesis chapter 17, verses 9.
That's Ishmael. Okay.
That's Ishmael. Now, Ishmael is the father of the Arab nations. Now, has God kept his promise?
Yes.
That map you're looking at there is the Arab League states.
What is the reference? Sorry.
What to?
Genesis 16,
16,
9 to 12.
Yes.
Okay.
16, 9 to 12 was the first one. The covenant one was 17, 19 to 21. But you can see, so those are all the ones that are in the Arab Confederation, and of course, right smack there is that little piece of land, which is a bit of a thorn in their flesh. You can start to see now how this is like with the Arab people, but even more so than that is is that is a map of the Muslim nations in this world, because Islam goes well beyond the Arab nations. All the Arab nations are Muslim, but of course, hang on, Turkey is Arab, but it's Muslim. So is Bangladesh, so is Pakistan. You've got a lot of Muslims in India. Still. Indonesia's got the most Muslims, but none of those are Arab. But they are antagonistic towards the Jewish people, and we'll probably see why. But just see, in the middle of the whole of Muslim world, what's the little thing, the little point of contention is that little tiny country Israel. That puts things into a lot of perspective, I think. Would you agree? Because that's the world that we live in. Okay, so this is the land today, and you've got this little bit down here is the bit called the Gaza Strip. Where let me go back to the
Previous.
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 Where's the previous button?
This arrow.
This one here.
No, the menu. If you write,
no,
that's it.
Right. So this little bit here is the Gaza Strip. This is what many people call the West Bank, but the Jews will call Judea and Samaria. And this little bit up here is the Golan Heights, which we'll talk about in a minute.
It's called West Bank because it's on west of Dead Sea.
It's the right when you come to the history when it was made a state and the Arabs attacked. You'll see this in a minute. Jordan, which is this country here, actually controlled this bit, so they call this the West Bank of the Jordan.
Oh,
Okay. It's on the east side of Israel, but it's the West Bank of the Jordan. So I'll talk about how this map ended up in this shape in a minute.
So is that West Bank not part of Israel before?
It used to be, isn't it?
I'll explain it now because that's a yes and a no.
okay.
So,
Because what has happened over the years, they gave autonomy to the people in the Gaza Strip, and that's why we've got a lot of the problems at the moment. And there was, we'll go to the Oslo Accords. They made, in an attempt to try and make two states, that this land here is actually divided into different areas. Now, people don't appreciate this at all in the Western world. But if you were to go into that area, the West Bank, it's some of the areas are called areas A, others B, and others C. So areas A, which are the ones there marked in this bluey colour, like here at Bethlehem and here at Ramallah and Nablus. Areas A are totally Palestinian controlled.
Oh no.
Areas B, which is the orangey colours, are joint controlled by Israel and the Palestinian Authority. So the Palestinian Authority basically run the country, but the security is down to Israel. And the rest, which is Area C, is run completely by Israel. So when you hear on the news they talk about settlements, every one of the settlements are in the areas controlled by Israel, not the ones at the Palestinian Authority. Does that make sense?
so they are asking to take over those.
They want the lot. The Arabs, and you'll see this when we go through, do not want a two-state solution. They want a one-state solution with no Jews. That's their goal.
That's not.
Yes.
Every time they've been promised land, they've rejected it. They don't want. The bottom line is they don't want Jews.
But they are asking for two-state solution in the matter.
No, everybody else is asking for a two-state solution and trying to impose it on them. And every time it's got the Jews have said yes every time, or just about every time, and the Arabs have said no. You don't hear that. And there's been a whole series of these down through the years. Because the bottom line is they don't want the Jews. You hear them say, from the river to the sea, Israel. In other words, no Jews from the River Jordan right the way through to the Middle.
Okay.
That's what it means.
So they say, from the
They-
river to the sea means
From the River Jordan
to the sea.
Mediterranean Sea.
The whole
Yeah.
area.
No Jew.
That's what the chant is. It says, get rid of the Jews.
Oh,
That's
that's
what
what
it
they
means.
were holding the sign.
We were-
towards.
yeah,
Ah.
From the river to the
I
sea.
didn't understand what it
So,
meant.
but that what is it to do with ceasefire then?
Okay, we'll come on to all of this.
Yeah. See.
We'll come on to this when we get to the modern day history.
I think
It's
one of the
absolute-
Israeli, one of the person they were interviewing, one of the Israeli, and they said, they are saying, from the river to the sea,
That's what
yeah, and that Israeli was saying, okay, yeah, from the river to the sea, where do you want to be? Yeah.
all of it. That's right. The bottom line is
Yeah.
they don't want a two-state solution. Everybody else thinks it would be, if we have two states, they can both get on with their own lives. Actually, the Arabs don't want that at any cost. The Jews have said yes, but actually it's really complicated because if they have millions of Arabs coming, that changes the whole balance in Israel. So politically, there's all sorts of problems there. But this is the current situation. Gaza is totally Palestinian controlled. But just so you're aware of this, because nobody talks about this, and there is quite a freedom of movement because lots of people will come over the border every day, or did before the war. 20,000 people came out of Gaza a day to work in Israel.
Every day.
Every day. That's what it was. Because they came to work the fields. This is where they got the money, and then they went back to the families. Where this is in Jerusalem. Hundreds, probably thousands of Palestinians come over the border every day to work in Israel. And they go back at night through the borders. And I'm not saying it's easy, because you'll see what the checkpoints are like. But there has been that freedom of movement. But it's only one-way freedom of movement. Because when you go into an area A, now I've taken this off a moving vehicle, so it's a bit fuzzy. So this is, I'm not quite sure which area A this is. This is probably Bethlehem. Whenever you go into an area A, you'll see these red signs, and basically it'll say down here, the entrance for Israeli citizens is prohibited. Jews cannot go into area A. Full stop.
Which is controlled by Palestinians.
Yes. Palestinians can come out,
Yeah, that's
but the
ridiculous.
Israelis. Now you never hear of these things. I was with a group of people the other day, and showing them some pictures of places like Bethlehem, and the Jewish believers there said, "Thank you for showing that. We've never seen Bethlehem because they can't go in.
Oh, now Bethlehem is under Palestinian control.
Palestinian control.
Bethlehem.
That's in area.
So they've never seen.
No, they're not allowed through the border.
We can go.
We can go. Yes, as tourists, you can go anywhere. And
But Israelis, they can't go
no,
to
they
Bethlehem.
can't.
Wow.
So when they talk about an apartheid state, it's the opposite way to what you actually think of. There's so much untruth in the
And
media.
what about the history we have in the Bible in Bethlehem, Bob? I mean, everything is controlled by them.
Now, which is
I mean, is it? Yeah. I mean, the Bethlehem.
Bethlehem is controlled by the Palestinian Authority. It's Area A. I've been there many times. We've got Christian friends there. I've spoken in churches there in Bethlehem. There's not many Christians left in Bethlehem, but there is. You have to understand the situation. If you look at the map, and if you look, there's all these houses. Well, it's actually 3 different towns: Bethlehem, Beit Jala, and Beit Sabor. And it looks to the naked eye like it's one big mass of buildings, but it's actually 3 townships. They're all Palestinian controlled. Bethlehem is now 80 or 90% Muslim.
Wow.
Because the Christians moved out. But Bet Sahor and Bet Jala, the next 2, the one is about 50-50 Muslim Christian, and the other is about 80, 90 Christians to Muslim. But bearing in mind, when they say Christian, they don't mean Christians as we think of Christians. They mean not Muslim. You're either born a Muslim or you're born a Christian out there. That's the way they speak, and so they will identify to either the Roman Catholic Church or the Greek or Orthodox Church or what have you. But you can say to them, are you a Christian? Yes. Are you a believer? No. Because the language is different. What we think of as a Christian, they would call a believer. Does that make sense? And now, round, certainly this is at Bethlehem, because there were so many suicide bombers coming over in the 90s, they built a fence around it. So you have to come through checkpoints. And it's horrible. This is like the Berlin Wall. This is at Bethlehem. So the one side, on the other side, is Palestinian controlled. That's Bethlehem. This side is Israeli controlled. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Through the checkpoints. And wherever you go in Israel, you will be reminded of the problems, and reminded, because it's got a history going back many years, of the various battles, the various things that were fought. We just came across these were trenches from the War of Independence, which was 1948. These are trenches up on the Syrian border, which is still at war with Israel officially, up in the north. Abandoned and destroyed tanks from different wars. Wherever you go, this is what a checkpoint is like. When you drive down the road, you go from one area to another, you go through checkpoints. And of course, Israeli cars are marked different to Palestinian. They can tell by the number plates, but they can also tell by the automatic number plate recognition. They know where you've come from. And so, and wherever you go, there's guns. Which, it's quite strange. If I see guns in this country, that makes me feel uneasy. When I see guns out there, it's actually quite comforting. Bearing in mind that all the young people go to national service at 18, boys and girls. Boys will go for 3 years, girls will go for 2 years, off into the army. Well, actually, there are now alternatives to that, but they do national service. And this is one of the reasons why the students at the university is so different to here, because they do this before going to university. So they'll be going to university at 21, whereas our kids are going at 18. They have grown up a lot in that 3 years. They go with a much... they've been in the army. They're a much different mindset to our young people, because ours is just... some of the stupid things some of our kids do when they leave home for the first time and they're getting drunk. We got a university in Worcester. When they first start that Freshers Week, you think, these are supposed to be intelligent kids, and they're drunk on the street and also. You won't find that in Israel because they've got this. They've grown up. So you with me so far? Yeah.
So this is Israeli army person?
Yes, this is Israeli army person. And so there's quite an affinity between the military and the people, because everybody's knows people in the army. I know people now who are serving down in Gaza because they're the children of friends that we've done.
It's a quick one, Bob. If you go back to that ABC areas.
Yes.
So the blue highlighted areas are Palestinians. Israelis are not allowed.
Yes.
The common controlled orange one is both Israel and Palestinian. They are allowed. They live. They live in peace.
No.
There's no word called peace.
They are No, you can't say they live in peace.
So they are dangerous. They can,
This is where these areas. You'll hear them talking about where the Israelis have gone in to get some of the terrorists out and whatever. These are the areas that they'll have gone into to drag them out.
Okay. You find both Israel and Palestinians on the orange highlighted ones.
You won't find Israelis living there,
Okay.
but you'll find Israeli soldiers there because they take care of the
Fights.
So they are taking care of
the
pieces of lands where people hate them.
Yes, and this is where you get a lot of the problems.
Yeah.
Now,
So you'll see the pictures where they're throwing stones at. It's very often those areas. But within this one, you get both lots of people. But you'll get a Jewish community with a fence around it, and they'll have guards right next door to Palestinian land.
They have a fence around as well.
Not generally speaking, because the Jews don't attack the Palestinians. It tends to be the other way around. And we've got friends out there, I mean, who have got land, Palestinians, right next door to Jewish areas. And one chap we know, when I tell you his story, he's a he's a real born again Christian. He got a little plot of farmland, ancient, goes back, right next door to Jewish settlements. Now they won't allow him any water. He has to get his water piped in from a real good distance. And they will come down and they will attack his plants and that. And he was telling me the story one day. He said, this land that he's got now, he's now, it's an area where people can come from all. It's a Christian centre. So they have youth camps and all sorts. Not very many Jews come, but lots of Palestinians. And he was telling me, he said the battles he has, he planted a load of trees. When he doesn't live on the land, he lives in Bethlehem, or just outside Bethlehem. And so he planted loads of trees, and for some reason he had to go back to his land one evening, and he found that all the trees he just planted, they just destroyed. And they ran off when he got there. So he knows who did it because it came from the next door. But he goes back, I think it's the next day, a day or two later, and he actually sees one of these people. They've got the vehicle stuck. And he says, this is the battle. As a Christian, they'll go and help him, but it really is. So you can understand that, what do I do, what do I not do? And he got a little tractor, and he said, I'm going to the tractor. He said, well, no, I shouldn't help him. Well, yes, I should. No, I shouldn't. Anyway, the long and short, he only got the tractor and pulled the car out of the mud. Now, he actually made friends with these people, but then later on, you can't make friends, and then the enmity returns. But from the Jewish side, it's not all one way, you see. And if you ever meet Rami and his family, they are lovely. They're just out and out. He's had some. If you ever get him to tell you his testimony, he's been in prison and all sorts, because he is a born again Christian. The rest of his family aren't. Most of the persecution comes from the religious Christians.
That's true.
You know, the Roman Catholics and the Greek Orthodox. They're caught in the what we say, the crosshairs of everybody. But they're just out and out for the Lord. So
Well, it's very touching that he could go on.
Sorry?
Palestine is only that area. It is no other beyond Jordan or anywhere else. It's only that area.
This is Palestinian Authority. Now, the word we'll come to the word Palestine. And all right, what is Palestine? There has never been a state of Palestine ever. They'll talk about it, but you've never had a Palestinian currency. You've never had a Palestinian parliament.
Wow.
Israel, you get the name Palestine from the Romans. When the Romans, and we'll get onto this bit of history, when they kicked when they destroyed Jerusalem and kicked the Jews out, they named Israel Palestinia as an insult to the Jews, because they named it after the Philistines, which are their traditional enemies. But it was always a mixture of there were Jews living there all the time. It's the same
it's
piece
the
of land.
Romans who named
But we had,
Yeah.
we had
So
wars
fun.
going back to Bible days.
when they destroyed.
Philistines
When they
attacking
destroyed,
Israel,
when they-
Jews, and
Wh-
vice
They
versa.
invaded.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're not,
The
I mean, I don't
purpose
remember,
they-
please correct me. Did they not call
Renamed Israel.
land of Philistines or something
Philistine.
like that, where they live?
To
You'll
insult
find in the
Jews.
Bible there is a place called Philistia, which is where the. We'll get on to that. It's
So the enmity goes back there, okay.
enmity goes right when we get under the second part. Enmity goes right back to Genesis. But this is just like the modern day. This is where we are geographically. But you won't ever hear this explained on the television.
Yeah.
And that's why the Jews don't call it the West Bank. You'll hear people talk. The television will say this is occupied territory, but that's a political term as opposed to a legal term, because I don't understand all the legal arguments. Would you say no? This is actually ours. It was given to us by the United Nations, given to us by all the things are ticked. Call it by all means disputed territories. But it's they get the political and the legal mixed up. But nobody tells you this because the media is very one-sided, especially in this country. Not everywhere, but this country is.
But actually, on the map, Bob, I think even the West Bank, everything from top to bottom, it's Israel, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
It is, but they don't.
Occupied.
The Palestinian Authority areas. They are allowed to control their areas. Full stop.
Yeah.
Areas A.
What about sea, Bob?
Sea is controlled by Israel.
I mean,
and
only the security wise.
Sorry?
Only the security wise.
No, the whole lot.
Oh,
And that's where you get when you talk about
Water.
settlements, which are sometimes big towns. They are all Jewish, and they're in the area C. Area C is basically part of Israel,
Okay.
but it's in that area. When you see where the boundaries come from, when we get onto,
Yeah.
you see why they're in that area. But let's go right back to because we're talking now just purely on the physical side, which is what most people would understand. Israel its location is strategic. You see it's up there, and the thing is, this bit of land here joins the continents of Africa, Asia, and Europe. And if the land journey, this is sea down here. You can only come across the end here, and you can't travel east to west very easily. You've got to come up the coast. Now I showed if you remember this picture, I told you that all the way up the middle here, there's a range of hills, and this is a very deep valley. So it's actually very difficult to go from east to west. So I don't know whether this one is, probably this is better. If you took a slice across Israel, you've got the sea, the Mediterranean Sea. Probably this is a better one, the Mediterranean Sea. You've got the coastal plain. Then you come up into the mountains. Jerusalem is high up in the mountains. But then it goes right down into the Dead Sea to the Rift Valley. Then on the other side it comes up even higher than it does in Israel, and then off down towards Saudi Arabia. So if you're going to travel from this side to this side, you are going up and down some pretty big hills. So that's why the main runs. In fact, if I put a picture in here, it just
Is it why they say city on the hill?
yeah, because Jerusalem's on a hill. Well, it's on several hills, but it's not easy to get to. You've got to go to get to Jerusalem. Was never on a main road. It was never on most capitals in the world. There's a reason why they exist in the geographical location they do. Because maybe it's a port, a coastal port. Maybe it's on a river. Maybe it's on a crossroads of major communication lines. I don't know about in India, but most of in the state capital. There's a reason why they're in that location.
Right.
London is on the Thames. It was a port, you know. It's Jerusalem's up in the mountains. You've got to go out of your way to get to Jerusalem. Yes, there are roads today, but in the old days, everything came up this coastal road. It's called the Way of the Sea. And if they wanted to, they either carried on up the sea into Europe, or this is where they would cross the mountains, around the end of the mountains, to go up to Damascus and off to Asia. And this is the Sea of Galilee. This is where, when you start to see this, you start to realise now Jesus' main area of ministry was at Capernaum. Capernaum was on the main highway to. There were people coming and going through Capernaum the whole time. That's why you had tax collectors and that there. Okay, do you start to see where these things fall into place? If it had gone up into the mountains, there'd have been very few. But there were a lot of people passing through Capernaum because here's the main that red. I've lost my thing. This thing here. This is the up Damascus. This is the main route. This is called the King's Highway. It's still. This is on the other side of the mountains in what is today Jordan, and we've driven that. But these little yellow things that just they were just tracks.
Tracks of what? Where Judah is? Judea. So I mean, according to the Bible, northern Israel, southern Israel, Judah.
I'll show you that later. That's it. Judea is the area. Judah was the tribe. So, but they had the tribe of Judah had a part of Israel that was allocated to them, as did Benjamin, as did all the others.
City of David.
Yes, we'll see that in a few minutes.
Okay. But now Judea is current terms West Bank.
Yes, it's Judea is really the area south in the mountains of Jerusalem and Samaria north. And Samaria, that region of mountains, which is the West Bank, part of the West Bank, is all, even in Jesus' time, that's where the Samaritans lived. And there was animosity between the Samaritans and the Jews. So the Jews didn't usually walk, well, we'll come on to it in a bit, they didn't usually walk through Samaria, they used to go round it. But there's a history to why that is. Well, let's go right back to the beginning of the Bible then.
Sorry, Bob, just on that. You mentioned the three continents. What was that? I mean,
the three: Africa, Asia, and Europe.
Yeah. So is Israel the only one that connects to that?
Yes, that's the main land route for merchants and to go
merging
through.
Those continents.
So whoever controls that has a real control over the whole.
All the three continents.
Where all the merchandise travelling between them. So if you go right back to the old parts of the Bible, where it's talking of Egypt and it's talking of Babylon and the Tigris, Euphrates, this is called the Fertile Crescent. You had these two major areas. This is the whole Euphrates, which is today modern Iraq. This is Egypt with the Nile. Oops. And if you what's the little bit of land that joins them is Israel. So those are the two main areas of population. Israel is so you can start to see it's key. It's key in whoever controls that controls so many things. And down through the years, it's been conquered over and over again by various groups. So you go through the Bible; these are all biblical things. The Assyrians came. Remember the Assyrians came and they took the 10 tribes away with them? That's the Assyrian Empire at its height, which is the little bit that joins it in the middle. Not just the Assyrian Empire, the Babylonian Empire. When they came and they came and they ransacked Jerusalem, took them back to Babylon, to captivity. It's the little bit in the middle. Here's you got the Persians, because the Persians took over from the Babylonians. Remember, this is when the Jews came back to Israel. But all the way through, you've got what's the little bit that's always joining it? So you see, it's quite strategically important, and all of that's Old Testament, and you read all about that in the Old Testament. Now we're coming to the bit where lots of people don't understand, because it's the bit between the two testaments, because we've got between the Old Testament and the New Testament, you've got about a 400-year gap. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
What happened in that 400 years? Well, one of the things that happened was Alexander the Great. You all heard of Alexander the Great, came and conquered a great part of the world. This is the part of the world that he conquered, including Egypt and including Israel. And this was in about 332 BC. So
between Old and New Testament.
Between the Old and the New Testament. And this is where a lot of the Greek thinking, a lot of the, we call it Hellenization, that's the Greek way, came in. He died, he didn't last too long, he died quite early. His generals took over, and the generals would fight between each other, because it's as to which bit of lands they were going to have. And Israel was very often in the middle. And you get a point in that time, in about 167 years before Christ, where Antiochus, who was a Greek general, ransacked Jerusalem, desecrated the temple, sacrificed pigs, poured pig's broth over the scrolls, really upset the Jewish people. And
is it the first temple or is it the second temple?
This is second temple. This is second temple. Didn't destroy the temple, but desecrated it.
When was it?
This was 167 BC. Now,
so he's a Greek man.
He's a Greek.
Well, he's a king, yeah.
Well, he was one of the generals that kind of ruled the kingdom. What I want you to see so far is all through these years, since the time of King David and the kings, Israel has been controlled by other people. So the Syrians, the Babylonians, and this is the Greeks controlled it. There's this little period here where Antiochus did that and really upset the Jewish people, and there was a revolt against them. And you'll hear that it's called the Hasmonean period, with the Maccabees, the family. It was a priestly family, rose up and galvanized the people and basically kicked the Greeks out. And that was the last time that Israel was controlled by Jewish people. There was just that little period of history, because the next people to come on the scene were the Romans.
Wow.
So between the Greeks and the Romans, and so it lasted from about 167 BC to 140. It wasn't a big time frame, but they do really look back to that time. Now we're coming up next month. You'll hear them, the feast of Hanukkah. You've heard Hanukkah?
Yeah.
What are they celebrating? They are celebrating that period of time. Because one of the things that supposedly happened in that time, now Ben, this is not in the Bible, this is outside of the Bible, is when they cleansed the temple after all these things had happened, and they wanted the sacred oil to burn in the lights. They found they'd only got enough for one day. It takes a week to make the oil. But that oil from that one day lasted for the whole week, lasted for 8 days, until they got more.
Wow.
And that's what they said. They're celebrating that period of time, and you'll see these but the normal ones are 7 branches. Some of them are 9 branches. Those are what they call Hanukkah. There will be in every house in Israel, and every day, it's 9 candles or 9 lights. It doesn't have to be candles. It's actually 8 plus 1. One is called the master one. And then every day they light another one until at the end of the 8 days they're all lit. Does that make sense? Every house, so the Feast of Lights, and you actually find that Jesus, or the Feast of Dedication they call it, and you'll actually find there's only one mention of that in the Bible, and Jesus kept the Feast of Dedication, and that was it. It happens in the winter. This year it's about our Christmas time because the calendar's different at the end, and that was just a few months before he died. And I'm just trying to think. Well, he had a big altercation with the religious Jews, and they tried to kill him, and he walked away, and then he went from there down to where John the Baptist was baptizing. That's where he was. The next thing that happens is he hears Lazarus has died, so he comes up for Lazarus and then goes back down and then comes back up for his final week. That's how the thing progresses. I don't know how we got onto that, but that's an important thing for the Jewish people, because you just see one after the other have conquered this land. But the Jewish people have always remained. And it's always been just an offshoot of every one of those countries. So the next big one is the Roman Empire. Now that was the Roman Empire at its height, and of course down here you've got Israel. So the Romans came along 63 years BC.
They even controlled UK.
Yeah, they even, well, not all because
all of it.
They didn't get up into Scotland. They didn't want Scotland. Hadrian's Wall, if you've ever been up there, they built a wall. So, because
UK controlled the world.
if you go to our country, most of the invaders that we've had over the years, it's been the English side that's been the prize. Because when you get up to, I don't know if you've ever been to Scotland.
Yeah.
I mean, it's beautiful in places. I mean, it's mountains, but you can't grow much up there. And in terms of military, it would take a lot of effort for little gain. Wales is a bit the same, but Scotland particularly. So it's the English side where it's the arable farming. It's where the rich pickings are, and that was true in Roman days. But because the Romans in this period of the Roman Empire. Is that making sense so far?
Yeah.
Well, the Roman Empire lasted till round about, it went on for about 376 years, but you know, where you draw the line sometimes on these dates, it's going to be different in different areas, but roughly speaking. And then you get something called the Byzantines. Now, the Byzantines were really they weren't Romans, but they were the people who originated in the eastern side of the Roman Empire. This was at a time when, under Constantine, Christianity became the official religion of the Roman Empire. So these, if you like, think of it, the Roman Church divided into two, into the East and the West. So these were very much Eastern Christians of that early period. Is that making sense? And they controlled it.
So, Bob, you mentioned that Romans became Christians. So, is that still part of the New Testament?
No, it's after the New Testament.
So it's after the apostles.
Oh yes, this is in the 4th century. This is early in the 300s. The story, very briefly. I mean, you've got all sorts of persecutions that came, and then you had an emperor called Constantine. And Constantine, this is the report. I mean, how much of this is true? But he won a battle, and he said in the sign of the cross. But suddenly, as a result of that, Christianity became the official religion of the Roman Empire. But it was a very paganized Christianity. Because and if we're honest, it's where a lot of our problems come from in the established church today. Why do we do things that we do? Something well, it's because of go back to Constantine, and it was a mixture of. You know, why do we celebrate Christmas when we celebrate Christmas? Because the Bible does that. Where do these all come from? Well, it was syncretism. A lot of the pagan things were mixed with Christianity at that time. They still remain mixed to this day. But they become so ingrained that people think this is what it's all about. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But
So,
it became...
yeah, sorry, Bob. So the Reformation was later, is it?
Oh, much later. Much later.
I think even this, they say even Easter is some kind of
Pagan.
yeah.
It's a discussion for another day. This why do we end up with what we end up in? This you'll hear the term Christendom, which is this is the period we're talking about. But some of the things that we do are a bit of a mixture. You say, well, where's that in the Bible? Well, it's not in the Bible because it's come from another source. But it's been adapted to be put in the Bible.
Widely adapted.
Does this make it sense?
Yeah.
So you're happy with this so far?
Yes.
Because this is where the New Testament starts, and but then you have the big change. Because Islam didn't exist at this time. Islam came about in
They say they have
it's a-
long history.
sorry?
So they claim that they have very long history.
Muhammad, I forget what time he lived, but it was about 600 and something. 636 is when they say the started to rise.
636
Well,
AD.
Yes, I mean a long time after Jesus.
Yeah.
So this is what I was hearing yesterday about John, disciple of Jesus, saw his life and he wrote John. And Muhammad came after 535 years after that, and then wrote about Jesus.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Long time.
Yeah.
What do you believe?
Long time after the New Testament was finished, and it is. I've never studied the Quran, but I'm told that there's a lot of things
Jesus.
taken
From
from both the New Testament and from the Old
Easy to
Testament
copy.
that have been mixed in there.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, isn't it? It's because Muhammad says, you know, it works the effect that this is like the final version that has come. All the others are imperfect, but no, it's not like that. And
So until then, is it? So what religion exists before Islam, Bob? Is it Arabs or what about the Ishmaels?
there was an awful lot of paganism, a lot of, and always has
Edomites,
been.
I guess. Edomites.
We'll get on to the Edomites, but there's always been a lot of pagan around the world. I mean, what was it like in India? You know, before you had a lot of Muslims there. It was always been paganism. So, I'm conscious that I'll ask you about the times that we just go through this.
Sure.
Is this
Yeah.
this is putting things into context?
Yeah.
So it's so you get the rise of Islam, and Islam was very much and is still very much against both Judaism and Christianity.
Yeah.
And they conquered. I mean, they just wave after wave after wave.
622.
They conquered most of the Middle East, even Spain, and this Islam, this Arabic period, it went on for about 463 years. Now this is where the Arabs, the Muslims, will say this land's ours. It goes back to this time. Actually, the Jews say no, it goes back a lot further than that time. But it's so some people will say, oh, the 7th century. This is what they're talking about.
Yeah.
But there's a history before that, and so Israel was under Arab Muslim control, and then you'll remember that what happened. There was a rise, particularly led by the popes, to liberate the Holy Land from the Arabs, and we had the whole period of the Crusades. You remember where wave after wave? It's not a good period. It's to study, but they were sending people out there to kick the Muslims out of the Holy Land. I mean, lots of things went horribly wrong, but for a time.
So before these Muslim people occupied, Romans have quit, is it? Romans have gone.
The Roman Empire just basically fizzled.
Oh, okay.
Like it wasn't sort of conquered and overtaken. It just sort of collapsed from within.
Okay.
It got very decadent. It got very loose with its morals and everything else, and it just fizzled.
The Catholic churches have been established by then, is it? I mean, in
Catholic, yes, because yes, and then there was, I can't remember the date. They call it the schism, where the East and the West. So you had the Eastern churches came under Constantinople, and the Western churches under Rome. I can't remember the date of that. But this was the Romans. They sent out all these people, and for a time the Crusaders controlled Israel. Not a big period of time. And if you go out there, I mean, we're only talking of 200 years, 192 years, I think, was the outskirts. You'll see a lot of Crusader buildings still left.
So, sorry, who are Crusaders?
Well, these were the Crusades were people from the West, really at the behest of the Pope, that went out there because they encouraged kids, they encouraged all sorts. Some of them got absolutely slaughtered. Some of them went out to kill Arabs, but they ended up killing Jews as well. And it's it's an interesting but not a nice period of time. And the Jews to this day will say, "Oh, Christians are against the Jews," and the Crusader period is one of the periods they point to, because they massacred many Jews. And they said, "Oh, you did that, the Christians did that."
Sorry, Bob, I just missed that. So after the Arabs, the Muslims occupied.
Yes.
So what is this
No,
crusade?
after the Arabs were Muslims.
Yeah.
The Crusaders, which were from the West, all over Europe,
Okay.
came to rid the Holy Land of the Muslims, even from this country.
Right.
So what religion were these
Christians.
Crusaders? Okay.
Well, Christian, in the sense that they may not have been believers. You've got to bear in mind, this is our history within Christianity. You'll hear them talk about the Dark Ages.
Yeah.
In those times, why are they called the Dark Ages? The Dark Ages is because we didn't have access to the Bible. Man, you couldn't read the Bible because it wasn't in your own language.
Yeah.
It was in Latin. You had to rely on a priest to tell you what it said.
Yeah.
So everybody was in the dark.
Yeah.
And it's in that period, so lots of superstition in the churches, lots of idol worship, but wave after wave went out there.
Yeah.
And so for about just under 200 years,
Yeah.
it was actually rid of the Arab Muslims. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
But it didn't last over long, because the next thing that comes in are the Mamluks.
Oh, never heard of
Now, from here on in, it's all Muslim, but these are not Arab Muslims.
Okay.
Okay, this is the difference. They are Muslims. These are non-Arabs. They were mainly sort of slave soldiers type things that used to work, but they weren't Arabs.
So are they from Muhammad? Or?
Yes, they're all Muslims.
Right.
They're all Muslims, but they're not Arab Muslims.
Muslim.
And Muhammad was an Arab.
What's the difference, Bob? I mean,
What?
Arab Muslims and
Muslims.
just Arab countries from
Yes,
Arab
yeah.
countries.
It's a bit like saying, what's the difference between an Indian Christian and an English Christian? We're Christians, but from different parts of the
Okay,
world.
yeah.
It's that sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
So remember when we looked at the Muslim nations? Yeah, you've got the Arab nations, but you've got places like Pakistan and
Yeah,
Bangladesh
Yeah.
and Turkey and all that. They're not Arab,
Arab ones, yeah.
but they're Muslim.
Yes.
So it's Muslim, but it's not Arabic Muslim.
Yeah.
It's still Muslim. So This went.
But Bob, does the Arabs, the current Arabs, do they believe in Muhammad? Or?
Yeah.
Oh,
They
is
are
it?
Muslims.
Oh.
There's,
Muslims are just in Arab countries.
yeah.
Ah.
They got the Quran. Now there's actually two major branches when you get into Islam, it's a bit like Christianity. Christianity's got denominations.
Yeah.
So this one will concentrate. You've got the same sort of thing within Islam, and there's two major ones. You'll hear them hear them talk about the Sunni Muslims and the Shias.
Yes.
Right.
And it's all about. Now I'm no expert on this, but it's all about who was the authority after Muhammad, and they go to different sources.
Yeah. They do fight between
They've
themselves.
still got
isn't
the
it?
Quran,
Yeah.
but it's and so they end up with slightly different versions of Islam.
Like denominations in.
Yes, but
Oh,
quite
Islam.
strong denominations, because Iran, for example, is Shia, and they that's what they'll not be frightened to use the atomic bomb. They believe that the Mahdi, which is the
Leader.
the one that is to come,
Okay. Oh.
won't come till they've destroyed the Jews. So there's a bent that they really want to destroy the Jews. The Sunnis have a different attitude, and the Sunnis and the Shias fight.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a mess. But they are all Muslim and they're all following the Quran. But they're all putting emphasis on different bits
But they all become one, isn't it, to fight against.
Well, that's the thing. It's when you've got a common enemy, and the common enemy is Israel.
Yeah. That's why even now in the current situations, all the Arab nations leaders,
all of them.
yeah, almost
If
13
you go
of
to
them.
I meant to bring the figures with me. If you go to the United Nations and you look at all the resolutions they've made, all of them, 40% are against Israel.
Yeah.
It's out of all proportion to everything. But you with me so far?
Yes.
Well, they were taken over after that by the Ottomans, who were also Muslim, but the Ottomans were controlled from Turkey. So Turkey is that pink bit in the middle. So they're not Arab. They're not Arab today, but they are Muslim. So you've got Erdogan who's very much against Israel. Even to they controlled Israel right up until the what time? Is it good to have a break here?
Please go
No,
ahead.
Well, I was just thinking everybody else has left, so it's.
I
No,
think
they
it
just
is-
went to.
oh,
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Just-
So you're happy with it. So this
Yeah.
is now. This was in place right up until the First World War.
So I think that is the reason Israel constantly they have been oppressed, taken
Yeah.
over.
Constantly taken over, but it was never none of these ever formed a state.
Yes.
It was just like a bit they'd conquered, and to be honest, it was left desolate. It was neglected. It's just a wasteland. It's only in the last 150 years that Israel has really developed. It was just a nothingness. It was strategically important, but nobody was going to invest anything in there. And so this goes right up now to the First World War.
So what did they do, Bob? Ottoman Empire. They ruled as well, Israel.
They ruled, yeah.
Okay.
But think of that as Turkey. Ottomans are the Turkish.
Turkey. Okay.
And so they controlled all this up until the First World War.
Okay.
In the First World War, this is when you get the British and the New Zealanders and the Australians involved. Because down here, you've got the Suez Canal.
Yes.
The Suez
Yeah,
Canal
that's
is so important
Yeah.
because that's the link between the East and the West. You know, it's always been strategic. This bit of land.
Yeah.
And the Allied forces, the Brits and that, wanted to conquer Israel and you in oops. Let me just is it yes. In 1917, you have something called the Balfour Declaration. Now, you may have heard of the Balfour Declaration. The Balfour, this is what the Balfour. I have much pleasure in conveying to you, on behalf of Her Majesty's government, the following declaration of sympathy with Jewish Zionist aspirations to have their homeland. Now, this is such an interesting story.
Sorry, could you click once so that goes?
As that goes?
Yeah.
So this is such an interesting story. Now, this was the official response from the British government during the First World War. If I've got my facts right, the 10 people who made up the committee, that 8 of them were Bible-believing Christians.
Oh.
And they read the Bible and they said, the Bible says that God will have the Jews back in the land. And so they said...
Sorry, Bob. So what did the Britishers and New Zealand and... what is this?
It's called
sign?
this was if you like an official declaration by the government in this land. They said, no, we think the Jews should have their own homeland again, but they were Bible believers. It should be open to others. If you read it, they're not going to ban other religions. But now the interesting thing, this is dated the 2nd of November. It was actually signed on the 31st of October. This is the day it was published, was the 2nd of November. And the very day that it was signed was the day of something called the Battle of Beersheba. Now, Beersheba is if you think of that country and you think of the desert, it's a town right in the middle of the desert. It's a very dry and arid place because the Turks controlled everything. And so you had it was mainly New Zealanders and Australians with a few Brits coming up from the south, and they got to take Beersheba. And Beersheba was fortified. They got this is First World War, so heavy artillery, and all the others had got horses. It was light cavalry. And as this document was signed in this country, the battle turned in Beersheba, and they just charged with incredibly few casualties and captured Beersheba.
So who were fighting in that battle?
So this was, if you like, the British side, which included the Australians and New Zealanders, were fighting the Turks.
Oh, okay.
All right, and so it's one of those miracles, and but probably down to the hour that the British government signed this, the battle turned, and they just took Beersheba, and the Turks fled.
Wow.
And when they got to Jerusalem, they walked into Jerusalem without a shot being fired.
Wow.
They took, and this became so important because this was basically the British government saying, we think the Jews should have a homeland. And on the basis of that, at the end of the First World War, the League of Nations, which was like the forerunner of the United Nations, said to the Brits, okay, we're giving this to you to look after, to make it, to establish a homeland for the Jews.
Right.
So at the end of the First World War, are we?
You still going?
We're about to finish this bit, I think.
Oh, go on, carry on. I'm listening.
Okay. At the end of the First World War, all of this place that all of these bits that were controlled by Turkey. Turkey was left out of it, but Britain was given the mandate to look after Israel. It also had, you can see the British mandate, the British, I've lost my thing again, the British down here, they were given all of this area this was then called Israel. The French had
Syria,
and Lebanon, I think.
yeah.
And we controlled it, but we reneged on our promises. This is a very bad period of history for the British people, because we, in fact, we made it hard for the people to come back to the land. And
what did the Britishers do?
Well, this is between the two wars now. We stopped immigration into the land, and bear in mind, millions died in the concentration camps after this. The problem was this: the Arabs had the oil, and they've made promises to the Arabs as well as to the Jews. Who won?
Arabs.
And the Arabs did. It's a very bad period of our history. Our governments in this country changed, so those that had made the promises, they were out, another group were in, they didn't see the same thing, and actually made it very, very difficult for the Jewish people. Yeah.
This was after the First World War, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
So what is that mandate for Palestine that British
The mandate means that they were given the control of Israel. The mandate
officially given
that was the
control.
official control by the League of Nations,
United Nations,
which is the forerunner to that, to look after Israel, with a view to it becoming an official Jewish state. But we did do very well at all. That was the size of Israel at the time. And one of the first things that we did was we divided Israel. Basically, they drew a line right down the River Jordan, and then from the Dead Sea right down to Eilat. And the majority, the biggest area which you can see is to the right. They said, okay, that's an Arab country, and that became Transjordan, which today is Jordan, the Kingdom of Jordan.
Actually, the Israel was this big.
That was the bit that we was. That was the Israel, which was given to the British to administer.
Manage,
And the first thing we did was we divided the land. Now you'll find God's got a lot of things to say about people who divide the land. You can put, I think, the demise of this country back to this point, because from this point on, this country just seems to have gone downhill about fast.
This was in 1917, isn't it?
1917 was when the Balfour Declaration came. They actually divided. I think it was in 21 or 22. Just after that. But that's how you end up with this long, thin country. But of course, it included the West Bank, Gaza, and everything else at this time. So the first thing we did was to chop it in half, and roughly 3/4 went to Jordan, and the rest.
So that's Jordan now.
That's Jordan. That's we're now known as the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan.
So there was no country as Jordan until then.
No.
So Jordan.
So until 1917 or 1920s, there is no concept of Palestine or West Bank or anything.
No, not at all. And in fact, there hasn't been ever a state of Palestine.
Yeah.
And nobody even started talking of it till the 1960s.
Oh,
that's how recent it is.
Yeah, very
That's after
recent.
independence.
Yeah.
So, are you okay with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So now you start to see where this little bit of land comes from.
1 second.
There were all sorts of commissions, all sorts of ideas to divide the land further, to have a Jewish state and an Arab state. This business of a two-state solution is not new. This is right up, even when the Brits were there, saying, oh, we should carve it up further, we should carve it up further. But you get to a point in 1947 where the Brits, there was a lot of infighting now in the land. The Jews are fighting the Brits, they're fighting the Arabs, lots of and the Brits basically said, we've had enough, we want to get out. So they gave 6 months notice. and the United Nations said, okay, you get out, we'll divide the land and we'll have a two-state solution. The Arabs rejected it, and in 1948, when the Brits pulled out on the 15th of May, the nation of Israel was established within the borders that it got, and it included Gaza and included the West Bank and everything. That was the state of Israel. The day after independence was declared, all the surrounding nations, the armies attacked because they wanted to push the Jews into the sea.
And the King Kaguda, they're still chanting there.
Still, yeah, and they said to you know what when you talk about the refugees, they said to the Arabs in there, get out, we're going to push the Jews into the sea, then you can come back and take over your land. Okay, and so I forget the figures now, but around about the same number of Arabs left Israel for that time, but also they expelled the Jews from that were living in these surrounding areas into Israel at the same time. And so this massive battle now, there's miracle after miracle after miracle in this fight, because the Jews had virtually no weapons, they only had handguns, the others had tanks and all sorts.
Wow.
That war of independence lasted about 12 months.
1 year, wow.
And at the end of the 12 months, there was a ceasefire. And the ceasefire, these borders of the West Bank and the Gaza, that's where the ceasefire came. Are you with me? So that was the but there was never a country of Palestine there. And what happened was, so Jordan controlled the West Bank, Egypt controlled the Gaza. Okay, those are and it was just that line was drawn, and so the Jews. There wasn't a physical barrier you could go between them, but it was this was effectively part of Egypt, and the West Bank was effectively part of Jordan, and that went on right up until 1967, when you had the 6-Day War.
Yes.
And in the 6-Day War, and again it was most amazing 6-Day War, because contrary to all the odds, all the surrounding Arab armies, the Israelis pushed the Egyptians right out of the Sinai, right out of Gaza, right out of the Sinai, right up to the Suez Canal. They pushed the Jordanians out of the West Bank, and they took the Golan Heights up in the top, which had been given at one point away to Syria and they took it. And it's miracle after miracle after miracle that this little tiny state did that. And that was because you'll hear about them say, we're only going to talk about things prior to what it was in 1967. Because in 1967 it all became Israel again. They became responsible for the lot.
So the Gaza and the West Bank and the Golden Heights, all three.
All three. And that's the way it was. And then there's been all sorts of negotiations, all sorts of peace treaties down through the years. The first one was with the Egyptians, and it actually cost the man his life. It was it Nasser? I think it was Nasser. Made a peace treaty with the Israelis. They said, we'll have peace with Israel if you will give us back the Sinai. And the Jews said, yeah, okay, you can have the Sinai and you can have Gaza. We don't want Gaza. Okay, so they didn't want it back.
Oh, why was that so?
Sorry?
Why didn't they want Gaza?
These people have always been a problem.
That's what.
Right from the Old Testament, because that's the land of Philistine. And so the first people to build a fence were the Egyptians.
Oh yes.
Because they built on the border
Rafah.
at Rafah,
Rafah
through a town. So Gaza, the Jews didn't particularly want it.
So the Philistines was actually in the place of Gaza before.
Yes, yeah.
Oh.
It's you'll see that when we come to the next bit. We're going to leave it after lunch. I think.
That's why they are, even now they are saying that no Arab nations wants to take
Correct.
Gaza refugees.
No,
Yeah.
and they won't take a single refugee into Egypt now.
That's what Egypt, said,
Nor Jordan. Jordan at one time accepted, not now, years ago, accepted refugees from the West Bank. They caused so much problem in Jordan, they kicked them out to Lebanon. They had civil war. Nobody wants the Palestinians. And a lot of the Arabs say they're not pure blood. And we might get onto that a bit later as well. It's not a single size fits all, but you don't hear this in the news, do you?
No.
So that was the first. So that's why there is now a peace treaty with Egypt. It's a very sort of rocky peace treaty, but Egypt is one of the only two Arab countries that if you've got Israel stamped on your passport, you are not allowed into Arab countries. Oh yeah. And that's why many people who are businessmen, they have two passports. One to get into Israel and one for Arab nations.
So even for us, Bob, if we go to visit Israel, we can't go to any Arab countries.
That's absolutely right, except
Visitors.
no. If you've got the stamp in your thing, you won't go. But what Israel will do is they don't stamp you anymore. They give you a visa on a piece of paper which is separate.
So go in as pink and come out as blue, or the other way around.
So that's how the Israelis get ready. If you go into one of the minor border crossings, you probably will get it stamped. We've had it stamped, haven't we?
That was before. No, we had it stamped. That was before they brought out these pink pieces of card.
Was it anyway? It's today. If you've got this is the whole Middle East.
So if you want to,
You can go to Egypt and Jordan.
I was going to say, except for Egypt, and then Jordan actually made a peace treaty. And Jordan said, okay, we don't want the West Bank. And there was a peace treaty made, and they said, we need water from the Sea of Galilee, we need access to the sea. So there was a peace treaty. So Jordan and Egypt, there's actually peace treaties. You can cross borders. And we've been in and out of Jordan. I've been in and out of Jordan twice. You've been once, I think. But not the other ones. Syria's still officially at war. Lebanon is still flinging bombs across even as we speak.
So if we apply for visa now, Bob, so we'll get a piece of paper for Israel, is it?
Yes.
Or,
if you go in on a British passport, you don't need to get a visa before you go. You can stay for 3 months on a British passport. But the visa, the authorisation, when you get there, it's just a little, just like the size of a business card. And you get another one when you leave to say you've left, but they don't stamp it in your book.
Oh, okay.
So the Arab countries don't know you've been there.
So we can just buy a ticket and we can just go if you are on British.
On a British passport. Yeah.
Okay.
But you need to apply before, is it?
No, it's one of
It's
the...
on arrival.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh yeah, even for Ethiopia, it's on arrival.
Yeah, a lot of countries... Up until we were in the British passport would get you into more countries than any other up until we came out of Europe. I don't know whether it's still true now.
No, but for US, I think we need to apply it.
For US, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
we have to
yeah,
apply for US,
Yes,
yeah.
But it is mostly a piece of paper that we get.
Yeah, but you do it in advance before you go.
Yes.
If we go to India on a British passport,
You have to apply for a visa beforehand.
Beforehand,
but
yeah.
you can now get an e-visa
For
Oh yeah.
for 30 days.
Yes.
But other countries they wouldn't allow. If you go from Pakistan to India, that's a different question.
Oh,
the
yeah.
Pakistani people. So it's different from different countries. So are you happy now with
Yes.
where we are here?
Bob, I missed that bit. After the Britishers, gave the mandate, and then Jordan became, and then Israel. Yeah, I need some explanation after that.
Well, go on.
So if you go back to the previous slides. Yeah, this one.
This one here. These were various attempts
Okay.
to split the land. None of them came to anything.
Who was splitting it?
Well, the royal that was a British government one said, if we can do it this way, and the Americans, everybody. This is all before the British left. It's happened ever since. You've had all the Americans a two-state solution. You give up this piece of land and you can have this, and none of it's worked. And actually, the Arabs have rejected every single one. So the Arabs, mostly the Jews, have said, okay. It maybe is very difficult to understand this, but the Jews want peace at any price. It's all, isn't it? It's almost like a pathological desire for, we'll give that if we can have peace. They just feel so persecuted and so many people against them that they've been prepared to pay, but every time it's the Arabs that have said no. Every time.
I mean, what was Britishers wanted from Arab that Arab said no?
No, Britishers
two
were
states.
proposing two states.
Proposals. These are different proposals, and there's been many more
Palestine and
since.
Israel. They'll divide the land.
And
They
they
didn't
still,
want it.
we'll have
Arabs want
you know,
everything to Palestine.
the Arabs can have this bit,
Whoa.
Jews can have
They don't
that
want
bit,
any
Jerusalem
Jews in
can be a
the
separate bit,
land.
and all
Right,
all
okay.
sorts
But
of
All
Jews
suggestions.
said,
splitting the-
okay,
Yeah.
two state is fine.
Oh.
But
for
that's
peace, yeah.
that's how it ended up at the end of at the end of the 12
And
months.
that West Bank bit, Bob. Who gave that control to Jordan?
Jordan,
The end of the war.
when you had that war,
Yeah.
12 months of war.
after 12 months of war, they said, okay, we'll have a ceasefire. That's where the armies were.
What war is that?
So Jordan
1967.
were controlling that bit, so they carried on controlling it.
Independence.
Egypt controlled Gaza, they carried on controlling it.
They were fighting, and whoever was in that area.
Yeah, that's basically, they
ceasefire.
said they called for a ceasefire,
Okay.
and they agreed those lines.
Oh,
Okay.
And those lines were in place up until the Six-Day War, 1967.
Wow.
so it was Jewish people, and who else was fighting for it?
Well, the Arab population, the Muslims,
Hmm.
and it just, and then, as I say, in
So West Bank
'67,
alone, the Jerusalem.
when they
by
pushed
the-
all the, it was just an amazing war.
Jerusalem.
It was
low.
in 6 days. They just this little tiny just push these big armies back.
So how many armies did they push out? And who started it?
Well, the Arabs started it,
Always.
and I mean the 6-Day War. It was started really by the Egyptians. The Israelis pleaded with the Jordanians, please don't join in, but they did.
Yeah.
And they all lost ground and pushed them all back out.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible.
It's the same thing happening now, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like,
it's-
Hezbollah is,
it's-
You've
Yeah.
got to bear in mind, hey, there's a big God in here somewhere.
Yeah.
Because some of the stories of the miracles that happen are just breathtaking. Like you get this story of this, a group of Jewish soldiers, and they find themselves in a minefield at night. And they don't know where the mine, because you step on a mine, you're dead.
Wow.
And they're in this minefield, and they can't see, so they can't walk. They just realise that they're frozen. And then a storm comes, huge storm. So you're in a minefield at night in the middle of a huge storm.
Wow.
But when the light comes up, they actually found that the storm had blown all
Oh,
the,
Mayan.
so they could see the mines and they could walk out.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And it's things like
Which
that.
war was that in? Was
That I don't know whether that was the War of Independence or the Six Day War,
Wow.
but it's miracle after miracle
So
after
it
miracle.
is a
Six-day
miracle.
war into the
War of Independence in Israel.
Okay.
1967 law.
48 కాకుండా కూడా
This is amazing.
War of Independence was 48-49.
Storm came.
67 was when basically, and they took back Jerusalem because Jerusalem was divided
Yes,
right
ma'am.
down the middle.
So
Now
even
it's
after
complete
independence, they had Arab control and other countries.
After independence, they had the war and they had the ceasefire, and the ceasefire line went right through the middle of Jerusalem. So the Temple Mount, the Western Wall, that was all actually in Arab hands. And
you mean
they-
Arab in the now Jordan?
Yeah, Jordan, and they destroyed all the synagogues. They did a lot of damage.
Oh.
But then you've had these various agreements and accords, and one of them is this is where you are today. You'll have heard of the Oslo Accords. This was trying to divide the land. And you've ended up with this mess that you've got at the moment.
Wow.
So this is areas A, B and C. And you can see the purple dots. These are the Jewish areas, but they're the settlements, but they're all in Area C. They're in the Jewish areas.
Yeah.
Now the Gaza Strip. Remember, I told you the Egypt said you can keep it. When the Israelis had control, that Gaza Strip down there flourished.
Wow.
It was one of the garden. What's it say? The garden, market gardens
Israel
of the
is
Middle
in
East.
control.
Israel country.
Flowers and fruit.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then what happened in 2005? So it's in relative history, as part of a peace initiative. Israel said, "Well, we'll give up the Gaza Strip. You can have it as a Palestinian state."
So not very. It's very recent.
Very
war.
recent, 2005. That's all. And the Jews, they dragged their own people out. They even dug up the dead bodies of the Jews that had died there, gave it to the Palestinians, and it was thriving. It was, people who went there just said what a beautiful place it was. It was, and they came out. And the first thing they did was they demolished all the Arabs demolished all the greenhouses, demolished everything. They then elected Hamas to be their their rulers, and Hamas have been there ever since. And what was a beautiful place has been turned into a battlefield. Billions and billions of pounds, dollars have gone in, and it hasn't gone to the people.
But then, if Israel was doing well with that Gaza Strip, why did they want to give it up?
Because the promise was, if you give it up, there'll be peace.
They wanted peace. They could give
They've done
anything for
time
peace.
and this is why the Jewish people say we won't do it again,
Yeah.
because we gave it up, and all we got back was rockets.
Yeah.
Because I mean, the thousands of rockets that have gone. It was in this current one. It's almost 10,000 rockets that have come over. That's a lot. You imagine 10,000 rockets heading in this direction. You
Yeah.
have something to say about it.
The whole country will be wiped off. 10,000 rockets is any country, even in India or.
Why do they call Gaza as an open prison, at least in the media?
Well, what they said, it's a relatively small chunk of land.
Yeah.
It's only about 20 miles long, and of course there is the
One side sea.
One side sea. This side here is all the Israel border.
Yeah.
This side here is all the Egyptian border. So the people are locked in.
Right.
Now they've been able to go. I say some have come out every day to work in Israel up until this point. You hear about. You've got this huge tunnel system. It's been growing for years, but the first tunnels were actually built under the Egyptian border. Because that's when all the rockets were coming in. That's when all they were bringing in high-powered motor cars and all sorts. You don't see the full picture ever on the television what's happening, but for the people, the ordinary people, they can't really escape.
So is there an official like international airport and everything in?
No, because they won't allow them to have a port or an airport because I mean it's bad enough stopping the stuff going in that's coming in from the tunnels.
Yeah.
If there's an open port,
Then
so that
it's even worse.
for security purposes they won't allow it.
So
This
who
is
didn't
one-
allow it? UN or
Sorry,
Israelis didn't allow. Who didn't allow them to have it?
Israel.
Ah,
was
okay.
this- no, you can control the land, but no, we're not because there is this such animosity. This is one of the reasons with the West Bank. The bit between here and the sea is only about 9 miles.
Oh,
That's it.
Yeah,
wow.
yeah.
Wow.
At its narrowest, it's about 9 miles. So and they're in the mountains, and they say if we let go of the security, all we're going to have is you're going to bring in you can shell anywhere in Israel
West Bank.
from within the West Bank.
Up to 9 miles.
So this is the worry. How do you have a peace agreement that actually makes sure that your country is safe?
Yes.
It's not a
And
huge land.
And people have tried and tried and tried and tried and tried, and it's not working.
Oh, it's very interesting.
So that's the Arab League states, as I say. Oops, and that's the Muslim state. So you can start to see a bit of the big picture. But I think we ought to stop there.
Yes, okay.
We'll carry on with this if you want, because we then look at that. All we've seen really is that's the worldview. There's a spiritual side to this that we need to not maybe spend too long on, but just to do. Is that?
But
No,
even the
I didn't know what time we finished.
No,
I didn't
no,
know what
no.
questions we get.
It was good.
Okay, so you're happy with that?
Yes.
But it's not what the media tell you, is it?
no,
No.
that's what I was about to say.
Completely
Now, please,
different.
nobody. It's very easy to we want to be on the Lord's side.
Yes.
Because bearing in mind, even the Jews, they are secular people. They're not going to get everything right. You've seen about the, we mentioned they want to be the gay capital of the world. Their abortion statistics are awful. It's not good.
No.
It's all of it.
So
It's
Tel Aviv is
they
the
need
capital,
the Lord.
is it called?
Sorry?
Tel Aviv is the capital.
No, Jerusalem's the capital.
Jerusalem, isn't it?
Yeah.
But Tel Aviv is the most secular.
It's
It's the most secular. Tel Aviv is just nearly all. You could be in any big city in the world if you're in Tel Aviv. It's a modern city. It only started to be built just over 100 years ago. It was just sand dunes before. It's where all the nightlife is. It's where
It's like New York or London.
any city, but it prides itself on that sort of modern image.
high tech.
A lot of the kids don't want to go to Jerusalem because they think it's too religious, and they know this is where you're going to get the nightlife. This is where you're going to get all the fun. It's
Where's the actual airport, Bob?
just outside Tel Aviv.
No.
Yeah.
And there's only one, is it?
Yeah.
Or few.
There's only there's actually two airports. The big international one is Ben Gurion, which is just outside Tel Aviv. Now, have I got a, find a map of Israel. How far back am I going to go? Oh, probably too far. Most of the biggest city is Jerusalem. It was Tel Aviv for some time, but Jerusalem is now bigger. They're all growing like mad. But most of the population live not just in Tel Aviv, but all the way up the coast.
Yeah, okay.
It's all the old Philistine area, because the Philistines where it came, they were coastal people. And most of these rockets that they fire up the coast into these populated areas, and it's up the coast at Tel Aviv where the airport is. They do have a second airport, which is down near Eilat, because they have to have a second airport, because if the one airport closes, they've got to have somewhere to land the planes.
Yes.
But that's a minor one.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay.
It's because all the population, the majority, all are in. It's desert there in the south. are all up in around Tel Aviv and the cities up that way.
So both the one you showed initially, the first slide with A, B and C control areas, that's the present one, and those are still controlled by some West Bank, Jordan, and
No, Jordan doesn't feature into it at all. They formed what they call the Palestinian Authority, which to control it, and you've had different parties that have wanted to control the Palestinian Authority. So the Hamas got Gaza. The others, it's a group called which is on the tip of my tongue then, Fatah, in the West Bank. Fatah and Hamas are like this.
But still they control the same Palestinian.
They control one controls Gaza, the other controls the West Bank.
Wow.
And Fatah's been very quiet in this.
Get
Honestly,
involved.
there's that much corruption in these things. It's all infighting, and the money that changes hands is absolutely staggering. The leaders of Hamas
Billionaires.
don't live in Gaza.
Yeah, they live in Qatar or
Qatar.
London, Qatar.
Billionaires.
One is in
The
London.
billionaires.
Yeah,
Most of them are in Qatar.
But they control from here.
from there.
So that,
the Hamas
they're not even interested in the Palestinian people. And they're billionaires. Where's the money come from? It's come from all the people sending money in.
Yeah, to UN and then.
And it hasn't gone to where it's needed. It's gone to building tunnels. It's gone to getting rockets. It's gone to getting lining people's pockets. There's a huge amount of corruption.
So what's this Hezbollah about? That's
Right, Hezbollah in Lebanon, which is not Israel. So that's the country up in the north east. Hezbollah is it's like a Muslim army within the country, but it's financed and supported by Iran.
okay.
It's an extremist.
It's like the terrorist group of Lebanon.
It's another terrorist group. Iran finances most of the terrorist groups in the Middle East. So they won't join in the war, but they'll give you the rockets so you can fire them. Because so Hezbollah is financed by Iran. They're all financed by Iran, but they're the ones that are based in Lebanon. So those are the ones that are flinging rockets up in the north of the country at the moment. And there's also coming from Syria.
But US funds Iran.
Sorry?
But US funds Iran in.
It's just given them. They had sanctions on for ages, and then because there's been all these negotiations because Iran's very close to getting nuclear weapons. The psyche in Iran is that they will use them. It's a different thought process to us. And they've been trying to negotiate and money, and they've just given them $6 billion.
Biden's administration.
I think I missed a lot.
Well, no, we just got through to the. We haven't even finished this subject.
Okay, I'm glad.
But we'll go to the spiritual, but we'll do that after.
We do record, Bob. Let me know.
Still recording.
We do record.
So it's.
So different.
Well, we can do. But I think I think people is interesting.
Yes.
It's very interesting.
Because it starts to
Very, very.
what you're